Now, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Saudi Arabia has the greatest responsibility to resolve the Gulf dispute. He made these comments as he started 2 days of shuttle diplomacy in the region. President Erdogan is visiting Saudi Arabia and Kuwait today, that's Sunday, before travelling to Qatar on Monday. He says it appears that Qatar is committed to what he calls a rational policy. Four Arab countries broke ties with Doha and imposed a land, sea and air blockade, and that was almost 7 weeks ago. Meanwhile, the EU's foreign policy chief is due in the region as well. Federica Mogherini is expected in the Kuwaiti capital to meet the emir. Kuwait is mediating the dispute between Qatar and the blockading countries. So let's talk to Rami Khouri, who is senior fellow at the American University in Beirut. And Rami, this is an interesting moment, isn't it, in the Gulf crisis, because we have President Erdogan entering the mix and Federica Mogherini of the EU at the same time.
Yes, it's like a veritable Game of Thrones armada of mediators coming into this region. It's with the Americans, the Kuwaitis are already here, the French are trying their hand, the Turks, the Russians tried to do it, and everybody else is going to try to help solve this problem, and that's a good sign. The critical element is that we are starting to see the outlines of a position based on principles that all of the major parties can agree to. Principles about non-interference in other countries, fighting terrorism, things of that nature. Those are very reasonable principles and everybody can agree with them. The four blockading countries mentioned those principles about 3 weeks ago. The Qatari emir in his speech 2 days ago more or less talked in the same language of respect, non-interference. So there's clearly a middle ground now where people can meet, and more important than that, the Americans have pushed very hard to the point of having American Justice Department and Finance Ministry officials inside the Qatari Ministries of Justice and Finance to help monitor the fact or check on accusations that there is no financing going to terrorists or groups close to terrorists. The German intelligence is going to be doing something similar in Qatar. So these are all individual but critical signs of movement towards a middle ground where an agreement can be crafted. It won't happen quickly, but it'll happen slowly over time because everybody needs time, especially the blockading countries, the Saudis, Emiratis in particular. The other ones don't really count as much. They need time to pull back from their extreme positions, which they started with about 7 weeks ago, and they have pulled back. It's a sign of their maturity. They're coming to more reasonable positions. So I think this is a moment of potential change, and the more that serious mediators get involved, and work even-handedly, the better it is for everybody.
Your timing, your suggestion of the timing of this then is interesting as well, because President Erdogan, before he even left Turkey, suggested that détente, and this is the language he used, détente is near. That's what he said.
Yes, I think it's very obvious to everybody that they're zeroing in on a set of principles, the 6 that were issued and others that can be added to them, that can bring about a détente. Now, the two critical elements is that all of the agreed principles have to be accepted and applied by all the countries. That this is not just for blockading siege masters forcing Qatar under threat to sign on these 6 principles. This is a situation where all the GCC countries and perhaps other Arabs will join in. Maybe they'll do something in the Arab League, which is not a very serious institution, but still it's there, that everybody has to be part of this process. And the second thing is that there needs to be a clear recognition that all these other ridiculous demands that were made, these exaggerated demands that were made of Qatar, close Jazeera, break ties with Iran, get rid of the Turkish base, these are all have been dropped already, and so that people need to really agree to talk about the real differences between them, and that means defining, what is terrorism. The Qataris have tried to do that with a new royal decree that was issued, so the other countries have to do the same, and the mediators can play a major role in this. So I think we're at a very pivotal moment, and the pressure, I think, needs to be kept up. The Turks are very peculiar mediators because, you know, Turkey's record in the last 10 years under Erdogan, they've shifted positions a lot on, for instance, relations with Israel, on relations with Syria, relations with Iran. So the Turks can, pivot very quickly. But that's what big, strong, self-confident countries do. If they have to change their policy for a certain reason, they do it. So they're now close to Qatar. They have a small base there. But they definitely have been trying to develop closer relations with the Saudis and others in the Gulf, particularly for trade reasons. And I would not put too much emphasis on the Turkish mediation, but the EU mediation, I think, can be very important. And let's hope that they all help the Kuwaitis achieve what everybody wants to happen, which is a negotiated agreement that is fair to everybody and applied by everybody.
Rami Khouri, live in Beirut. Thank you.